On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, you're not going to believe this. Healthy scratching Chris Kreider did not work for the New York Rangers.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On NHL, your daily NHL podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode of Locked On NHL, we discuss what is going on with the New York Rangers. It's been an eventful week, and it's Tuesday for the Rangers. Yeah, it's been just a mess. We'll talk about the Chris Kreider situation. We'll talk a little bit about Matt Rempe and his now suspension. And we'll also take a look today at a team that is doing the exact opposite, the Colorado Avalanche, rolling downhill in a good way. And we'll also talk about Patrik Laine, who loves the power play. And his impact on the Montreal Canadiens. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild and one half of the dynamic duo for your Tuesday edition of Locked On NHL, and joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. And JD, bad week to be a New York hockey team. The New York Islanders are chasing the record for worst penalty kill in the history of the NHL. And the New York Rangers are just continuing to fall over themselves. And the big news that is kind of overshadowing everything, Chris Kreider was healthy scratched because, as head coach Peter Laviolette said, we just need more. Guess what? They didn't get it. They didn't get it. They got blanked by the New Jersey Devils. 5-0 was the score there. And this is a New York Rangers team. I think I've seen a lot of people on social media trying to diagnose what's going on with this Rangers team. I think it's safe to say that it's reached crisis levels for the New York Rangers this season.
Yeah, this team is broken. They're like, whatever the magic formula that worked last year, it has gone completely wrong. Maybe it was Barclay Goodrow all along. Barclay Goodrow was the glue that held the New York Rangers together. So I don't know. I mean, when you're scratching, like, you're getting to that point of the season when you're having to scratch, Kreider, like it's insane just like how poorly this season has gone for the Rangers. And then just kind of the rub salt into the wound with the Devils today, like showing the clip of all the Rangers fans celebrating them passing on Capo Caco. And then there's Jack Hughes on the bench, has a little smile. Like, it's just bad if you're a Rangers fan. And, like this whole evening, going back to last week, right? You trade Capo Caco. You bring up Matt Rempe to kind of replace him, and what does he do? First thing he does is get suspended for 8 games. It's insane. Like, you and I couldn't sit for an hour and come up with like crazier storylines because what's going on with the Rangers, it's absolutely insane with how bad things are there. And like you said, the crisis meter, like, how is it not a 10, 11, 12? Maybe just because the Jets and the Giants are poorly as terrible there, so maybe that kind of pulls some of it away. But still, things are not great for New York sports right now.
I'll put it in a way that I think is going to cause people to have to sit down or consult a doctor. The only team that has fewer points than the Buffalo Sabres since November 15th, or the only team that has fewer points than the New York Rangers, blew the lead, is the Buffalo Sabres, who have not won in 13 straight games. That's the only team that has fewer points than them at this point in the season. And the natural spot for your head to go is, how do they get out of this? What's the fix? What are the Rangers going to do in order to dig out of this mess and to push themselves forward? Well, it's not that simple, because they have a lot of just flat out bad contracts on their roster, which includes, now Chris Kreider's isn't as bad, I guess, because it's only 2 more years after this year. But you got Mika Zibanejad, who signed until he's 2030. He has fallen off a cliff this year. Like, just up and down the list, just pick players. Artemi Panarin has not had a Panarin type season this year. And on defense, beyond Adam Fox, they clearly miss Keandre Miller, but
Yep.
beyond Adam Fox, like, it's just a bunch of guys back there, because you don't have the money to be able to allocate to fix it. And Igor Shesterkin has been just a little off. It is a collection of problems that all require multiple things to fix each problem. So you got like 30 different things that you have to try to do to get this going in the right direction.
Yeah, I wonder if they at some point just kind of just be like, it's not our year. Like, it's just not our year. Let's see if we can kind of clear up some cap space, which they've already started doing. You know, they've cleared up, a bunch of cap space. But the Trouba trade,
thanks, Ducks.
Yeah, thanks, Ducks. And they didn't even get Cam Fowler out of it. What a mistake there. But I do wonder if they just let's try to clear some space. We could be aggressive this offseason. Like, if we still believe in the bones of this team, and just realize hey, everybody's having a bad year this year. Let's just kind of get through the season, try to acquire some assets, be super aggressive in the offseason, and try to fix our problems, and just see if we can count this as just the year from hell, just that year where everything that could go wrong went wrong for them. And that could just be it. We could be talking about the Rangers next year as hey, look what they did in the offseason. They're good again, et cetera, et cetera. Or, you look at a team like Nashville, who went all in this offseason, and they've had a brutal offseason, and you hope that it's just not that, where they spend a bunch of money this offseason and all of a sudden the Rangers are one, bad, and two, have a bunch of expensive veteran contracts on their roster that they can't do anything with. So I do still believe, I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys you meant, maybe not Panarin, because even if Panarin's having a down year, Panarin's still insanely good.
Yeah.
But would you be surprised if Zibanejad or a Kreider, one of those guys gets traded? And I know they both have 3 or 4 years left on their deals, including this year. But would you be surprised if one of those guys is gone at the deadline to, one, try to shake things up a little bit, and two, free yourself up for cap space?
I would not, because the fans are starting to let them know. There were chants at the Devils game to fire Chris Drury. And if you're the general manager, that's when the seat starts to get warm, because your owners probably attends a good majority of games. They don't like hearing that stuff from fans. They don't like hearing for the general manager to be fired because the team is grossly underachieving. So it's going to behoove him to do something to try to kind of ignite this, restart this. And this just screams to me, JD, of one of those situations where you have a young team looking to inject some veteran leadership in. And I don't know, I've been speculating a lot about this team on Locked On Wild, the Buffalo Sabres are another team that is in a little bit of a need of
we talked about it last week. Yep.
Like, jolt them. Maybe you just take and you look at a key player on each side, like a top player on both sides, and you just flip them.
Yeah, trade your problems and see if it works. And
just not Tage Thompson.
He's going to the Wild. And
Confirmed.
I mean, going back to the owner, right? We know James Dolan, if anything, is super even keeled. Doesn't, I'm sure he's taking this with stride with what's happening with his Rangers team. So yeah, it's been a hot mess for the Rangers, and I think they're so happy that the break is coming now, because they need something else. They just need a break from everything. So.
Got to get out of town and just turn on that New York sports radio to calm yourself down. Although, to be fair, having heard some of those New York sportsy type shows, way more focused on the football teams. So
yeah, that's but the Jets and the Giants, I'll look at a couple more weeks before. It's going to be all eyes on the Rangers here. So good.
Hurry up and fix this. Chris Drury, so that you don't get booed at home. There's no easy fix for the New York Rangers. They can't just go out and acquire Cam Fowler or a goalie to solve their problems. They're not the Colorado Avalanche, who went and got a goalie. Not Cam Fowler. They went and got a goalie. Yeah, a couple of new faces in the goalie room, and turns out that was the secret sauce. We'll talk about the red-hot Colorado Avalanche as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you are going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. And you can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week on Prize Picks, I'm locking in on some key hockey players. In fact, you could have gone with yesterday's game and probably, not the assist category, but Jack Hughes, certainly 4 shots on goal. That's an easy cash right there. Artemi Panarin, better luck next time. No assist, but still pretty solid option. If anybody's going to score for New York, it's probably going to be the bread man. It is so simple to make your picks and to have fun with friends while potentially cashing out fast. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. $50 instantly. Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Thank you for spending your Christmas Eve with us as you are in the car, headed to wherever you're going, maybe listening to this on a plane. Appreciate you having us part of your day. Let's talk about the Colorado Avalanche, because the Avs were a mess. Alexander Georgiev was just hoarding goals allowed through the first several games of the season. But the Avs just continued to tinker. They continued to tweak. They continued to just tinker with the room. And they found a couple of guys that have been able to get things done to the point that now the Avs have hit the 21-win mark. They're 2 points behind the Minnesota Wild, and they are 7-2 in their last 9 games. And whether it be Mackenzie Blackwood or Scott Wedgewood, they're getting it done.
They are. The Lumberyard, great nickname for the tandem.
Yes.
Love that. The branding right there. It's perfectly great. But yeah, I mean, they knew their issue was goaltending, right? And anybody watch any Avs games in the beginning of the season knew, like, hey, this team is really good, and especially when they start to get healthy, they're going to be a good team. But they couldn't save a goal to save their life here, and they went out. You have to applaud them for being super aggressive to try to fix their problem, and not just get one goalie, right? They went out and got two goalies, completely changed the entire room in less than 2 weeks. And it looks like so far it's paying dividends. And now they're getting healthy. They feel confident in their goaltending. And this team is third in the Central right now. And like, they're probably, I don't know if they're going to catch the Jets, who are playing much better after kind of a little bit of a spike, a little bit of a bottom there. And I do think the Wild will turn things around here at some point. But still, they're going to make the Wild, I think, have to work for that second spot. And a Wild Avs playoff series, I'm sure, is something you are not looking forward to, are you?
No, not even remotely. But here we are. Now, actually, I guess I would say that would be one where being the road team, I don't think would be a huge disadvantage for the Wild. But still, I just don't like the idea of playing any of those teams that have massive levels of horse in their offense. The Colorado Avalanche, since they made the big goalie moves, tied with the Edmonton Oilers, the Ottawa Senators, and the Utah Hockey Club for the most points in the league at 14. They are, I believe, where are they at here? That's not what I wanted. They are tied with the Carolina Hurricanes for the fourth best goals against per game in that same span, at an even 2 per game. An even 2. They've given up 18 goals in the last 9 games they've played. And this is something too, this is the point of this that I don't think gets talked about enough. The mental lift, that knowing that you are not going to essentially be handing the other team a goal the moment you step out on the ice.
Yep.
Because that's the part of this, in listening to Chris and Kyle break it down on Locked On Avalanche quite a bit over the early part of the season. It's not like it was a meltdown in the third period that was leading to all these goals.
For the game.
It was pretty commonly the first shot faced. And that takes a toll on you. I know what that's like, having seen the Minnesota Wild do that through the first 20 games of the season last year.
I lived through Martin Jones, baby. Come on. The end. Yes. Martin
The
Jones
king.
slowly turned into a pumpkin. I believe me. The over under a goal within the first 5 minutes is, you always take the under on that with him. So yeah, it's like, it's hard because, again, it's always like that. I always kind of relate it to that we all, working in an office, that one guy who just can't do their job, and then everybody else has to kind of pull a little bit extra weight. And like, okay, it might work for like a week or two and be like, hey, he's struggling. But then when it's like weeks turn into months and months turn into a full like season, you're just like, I hate this guy because he can't do his job. Somebody do something about this. Yeah. I can only imagine where, like, how, like, especially in a locker room like that, where it's just like, bro, do your job.
And the other part of this too is, I'm sure the Avs are just wanting to kind of get a look at both guys before they commit to, okay, here's our starter. And it's most likely going to be Mackenzie Blackwood. But Scott Wedgewood has better numbers in his 6 games so far. He's 4-2. Goals against under 2, and a save percentage of .932. So if they need to go more 1A, 1B,
which they should.
They absolutely can.
Especially with Georgiev, right? I do think one of the big problems with Georgiev is how many starts that he had under his belt, especially the last 2 seasons. We had 125 starts in the regular season in 2 seasons. Like, I wonder if maybe they'd kind of learn a lesson on the fly here and be like, we can't just rely on one guy. And that's why they went out and got 2 solid guys, and maybe try to be a little bit more balanced for the rest of the season and not wear a guy down. I'm hoping for Blackwood's sake and for for Scott Wedgewood that is the plan for them. And when you get to the playoffs, it's a whole different thing. But like right now, this team's rolling. Both the goalies are playing well. Like I would just keep rotating, keep these guys fresh, and especially if you feel the way Makar and McKinnon and everybody else is playing right now, I would just let those goalies just keep splitting the starts as best you can.
And this is just another good example of a lot of times teams don't need like best ever. They just don't need worst ever. Like the Avs don't need top 10 goaltending.
No.
They just need slightly above league average because they were getting worst in the league. Minnesota Wild penalty kill. Take note. Don't need to be a top 5 unit. Just don't be dead last. We're not asking for much. It's just asking for not hideously bad. That's all. That's it.
Yes.
That's all I want.
Yeah. As a Wild fan, like, do you feel like that the Avs is that like giant who's been like sleeping giant who's now woken up right now?
Yeah. Yes, I do. And this is what you get playing with the likes of Dallas, Colorado, and Winnipeg. Unless you are able to step up and beat those teams, then you're going to be looking at every single one of them and saying, gee, I really would like to avoid having to play that team in the playoffs. And surprisingly, Dallas has hit the skids a little bit. They're 5-5 in their last 10, and they've lost 2 in a row to where now they technically are on the outside of a playoff spot right now. So food for thought.
That first round of the Central is going to be whoever's playing, whoever that 2-3 seed, like whatever matchup it is, that is going to be a brutal matchup.
Yeah. Going to really help my blood pressure. Thanks, Gary Bettman. Well, we'll worry about that as we get closer. But speaking of wishes, all Patrik Laine wants is to just have the Montreal Canadiens play on the power play for entire games. Because turns out he's kind of a power play merchant to start the season. We'll talk about Laine's start and where the Canadiens might have been had he been there for the entirety of the season. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score touchdowns because, of course, touchdowns are fun. Kyron Williams of the Rams, I swear, every time on Red Zone, it feels like he is always in the end zone. Or if you had Justin Jefferson, nice 2 touchdowns this weekend as well. But they also have, of course, how many points the team will win. You can bet on, of course, who's going to win the game. Plenty of fun props over at FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Home stretch of today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. So, Patrik Laine, he likes the power play. He like a scorer on the power play. He's got 8 goals on the year. Guess how many even strength goals he has?
Big fat 0, buddy.
Yeah, none. That would be none. He has none even strength goals so far this season. And you kind of figured that there was going to be, especially from like a mobility standpoint, there's going to be a little bit of a get back up to speed, forgive the pun, for Laine. But it is interesting to wonder kind of where this Montreal team would be at if he would have been there from the get-go.
Yeah. And again, he did avoid like catastrophic injury, going back to the preseason. And that was like, hey, he's going to be back midseason and you kind of hopefully maybe works back into form. But you can see like it's very Ovechkin like where he just gets into a spot, that shot is coming, and he just puts it exactly where he wants it. So, it's great that he's scoring. It's great to see him back doing his thing. I think as the season gets on and he kind of continues to ramp up where he is at and gets himself healthy again, I do believe that we will see more from Patrik Laine and hopefully get that even strength goal here at some point. But the NHL is just better with Patrik Laine doing awesome things in it because he's such a personality, so much fun, and it's good to see, especially kind of the struggles he went through with the mental health, and then he goes to Montreal, and gets hurt in the preseason, so like they have to wait. And you just see like the building when he had his hat trick all in the power play last week. The building was like shaking for him, and that is like. That's Montreal. They've seen plenty of amazing moments in that building, and just the way that they're like already behind, like 100% behind that guy and ready to go with him. I do think though, like our friends Laura over at Locked On Habs, they do have an interesting question with Laine and Caulfield and what this does with the dynamic for the Habs power play.
And I came to a realization this evening watching the game in that the power play runs through a different guy now. It runs through the end of Patrik Laine's stick. And
just totally fine.
Right. You can't argue with results. I wonder, though, what does this mean for Cole Caulfield's role on that power play? Because he was the guy on that power play. Now he is no longer the guy. He is a guy on that power play, definitely. He's not being relegated to the second unit, but he's, not the trigger man anymore, at least in the current configuration of the power play. What does that mean to you, looking at Cole Caulfield and the potential for him to score, 40 plus this year? Does that impact your assessment at all?
No, not really, because what's going to happen is the teams are going to figure out Patrik Laine. So then the Canadiens are going to have to alternate. Like Cole Caulfield and Patrik Laine are going to have to alternate being the threat.
Yeah, I think that's the exact right mindset that Laura is in, is that at some point teams are going to adjust. They're going to say, hey, in order to stop this special teams unit, we just got to get an eye on Patrik Laine. That's where having a player like Cole Caulfield comes in. It's where you can say, oh, okay, I'm getting double teamed or triple teamed, or the entire 4-man unit is focusing their attention on him. Turns out that leaves a few other players open on the ice. And as somebody who has watched a power play find just so many ways to not do their job, it never hurts to have multiple legitimate options at your disposal, ever.
Yeah, no, I agree. And right now it's Laine's turn. I think it will even out here at some point because, like you said, they're going to. I mean, they know what Laine does, but it's going to eventually open it up. Like it's you like when a team has like a really great number one wide receiver and the second wide receiver just gets open all the time because he's seen less coverage, et cetera, et cetera. I have a feeling that's the same thing with Caulfield, and that this stuff will even out here at some point. But I do, like you kind of mentioned earlier, like, this team right now has struggled. I don't think they've had maybe the season that they've wanted. And they have won 3 in a row going into Monday night's game for Montreal. And, they have 31 points in 33 games. But like it kind of felt like this year they were going to maybe start to push a little bit more to be a little bit more competitive. And, they went out and they acquired Laine. And the hope was that this was going to be more of a flirting with the playoff, maybe not a playoff push, but at least like kind of flirting with the playoffs. And it does leave you wondering what could have been if Laine was healthy this season and was here for the full season and not having to kind of ramp back into form right now and for this year. And again, like I didn't see Montreal, even with Laine being fully healthy, I didn't see them as a playoff team right now. But like the way Lane Hudson's playing, this team, it could have been, I think, at least a more competitive team all season long.
Yeah, and at some point, ownership is going to look at what has happened under Martin St. Louis' watch and say, we've got too many good young players to be just continuing to sit in this spot. Because as much as we dog Anaheim for continuing to just seemingly show
Cam Fowler,
seemingly show no signs of progress, the Montreal Canadiens over the last, I don't know, ever since they went on that run to the Eastern Conference Finals and the Cup Final in the COVID year. Since then, they have the same number of playoff wins as the Anaheim Ducks do. So at some point, you just got to start to see progress. And when the young players aren't getting it done, that's where the vets come in. And that's where Patrik Laine can hopefully help kind of guide them into the winning part of the forest.
To be fair, they are in the Atlantic. They are 6th right now. Thank you to the aforementioned Buffalo Sabres falling off a crater or falling off a cliff right now. And the Detroit Red Wings, who are also in that same position of like, when are they actually going to do something? When's the Yzer plan going to kick in? So, I think if they end the season like 5th or 6th, I think Ottawa is going to continue to do what they're doing right now. It's probably too hard for them to get to 5th, but if they end the season 6th and they feel like Laine is kind of back into form and the young players continue to kind of keep progressing, then maybe it is going to be a positive season for them, especially if they can stay ahead of the Red Wings and the Sabres, who had much bigger aspirations this season, and both those teams wanted to be playoff teams. Not to say that the Canadiens didn't want to be a playoff team, but just realistically, right? This was a team that you just wanted to see, maybe not picking in the single digits. Now you're picking in the teens and kind of pushing. So maybe they are on their way to being having a successful season. Maybe just started a little bit slower than what you wanted, though. So,
who would help the Canadiens get to where they want to go?
Cam Fowler, baby.
Yep. There we go. We got it in. All right. I think that's a good spot to leave today's episode. You mentioned the Detroit Red Wings, and what a mess. What a mess that situation is. But that's a story for another day. Appreciate everybody tuning in to today's episode. Make sure you hit that like button if you have not already. And follow us on your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week, because Locked On NHL has you covered every Monday through Friday with new episodes as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.